with the large number of players that were redshirted last year, 17 of them, then this is an opportunity for us to really integrate those players into the fabric to the team and the rotation, and there should be a lot of competition coming from those players for playing time. So creates a somewhat different circumstance for spring practice than what we've had in the past, maybe when we had a lot of the young players had already been participants, and I wouldn't say that they had a lock on their jobs, but they had to a large degree established their situation and their potential. So this one's a little bit different, and so we are, you can tell those players are very anxious for their opportunity to compete for playing time, and that the staff is very anxious now to see those guys in the mix. With 18 or 19 starters coming back, that's another part of the equation that's a little bit different than what we've had in the past, that there aren't open spots. That doesn't mean that there's not competition, but they're not wide open spots that have to be filled. So the competition is going to come from these players, A, to try to grab somebody's spot away or grab some playing time, or competition for who's going to be the next in the game at those particular spots. So we are really looking forward to using these players. For one thing, in choosing to hold these players out for developmental purposes last year, there were a number of positions that really played on a very kind of a skeleton crew on a very thin depth point, and they hung in there kind of in yeoman service, particularly some of those defensive players who never seemed to come out of the game. And I would have, with all the playing time they got and the experience that they have, that's a big asset for us. But in order to be able to establish a substitution rotation and get some rest for some of these players, both during the course of the game and for the home stretch of the season, we see that as a principal role for some of these guys moving up. So I think principally that's where the competition for playing time will be. So this will be a good opportunity, and this is one of those deals that we express to the players about taking advantage of your opportunities. You know, that there's 24 players coming in here that'll be here at the start of training camp who want playing time, but they're not here right now. So, okay, as a guy moving up, this is your opportunity, and seize the opportunity now, because okay, these opportunities, the way we express it, these opportunities aren't like buses coming around. You know, if you miss one, you can catch the next one. Okay, by the time that bus comes around the next time, somebody else might be sitting in that seat. Andy, everybody will be a participant. Now, in some cases, that's going to be limited in acknowledgement of their rehab, and that while this is an important time for us, quite clearly August camp and September the 1st are the most important targets. Specifically, Clint Sintim, who had shoulder surgery after the season, will participate, but will moderate what he's doing so that he doesn't put that thing in jeopardy. His off-season's gone well. He's ready to do a lot of stuff, but we won't put him in the full-bore action. Quite clearly the principal party here is Jamil Sewell, who had wrist surgery shortly after the season. That is on his throwing wrist. For all the upbeat feelings that we have about the team, obviously that's a big issue. As we've discussed before, college football has become to a large degree an offensive game, and as such a quarterback-driven game. We went into last spring at this time with really no experience at quarterback. We've got a player with a substantial amount of experience at the position, but with another question mark hanging over his head now. It's not so much that he's totally inexperienced, but what his participation and progress will be. And I think each practice will only determine how much more of that he can take. Kevin Ogletree had a similar surgery on his wrist. Not quite as extensive, but similar to what Jamil had, and he'll be more of a full-time participant than the other two will be. Obviously, the stress on his wrist won't be the same as with a quarterback throwing or with Clint warding off blocks, so that will enable Kevin really to probably do more than the other two. It would be heartwarming and fun for every pass that Jamil throws in the spring to be complete. But from another respect, if he can just take enough snaps to get plenty of looks to make the decisions as to where the ball should go, then that'll advance his playing a lot. But if he's unable to take enough snaps to just, he's just got to stand in the back. So we don't know where that's going to go right now. I guess the way I'd say it is that, you saw him play against North Carolina State, particularly Miami, and he could see it. He was clued in. There were a couple other games there where he played like he had wax paper on his face mask. Just couldn't see it. And so that comes from getting the looks. And so we hope that, particularly with him being on the top of the chart here, that he could, we would have hoped that he could have gotten, thrown 300 or 400 passes here this spring. That's probably not going to be the case, but then again, that's the reality of it. We'll deal with it as it is. But I think it's the looks that are at least equally important to the throws themselves. There's nothing like being out there to learn. That's the best learning process. Guys can go on simulators, watch tape, have walkthroughs, even go to practice, and you got to go out there and play in the games and learn how to play the games and the situations that occur. And there's a lot of on-the-job training that goes with it. And I'd like to be able to, in the optimum situation, integrate guys kind of strategically rather than in mass, as at some positions was the case last year. We are hopeful of the fact that that now we'll get the payback on that. That a lot of guys now are ahead of where they might normally be chronologically on the learning curve, and yet still have a lot of games left in front of them. Principally, obviously, we're looking at some of those offensive linemen that way. 3 of them now have 2 to go and have 1+ season as starters for them. John Phillips, one of our tight ends, has been in a lot of games for 2 years and still has 2 more seasons in front of him. Kevin Ogletree's that way. Appleby's that way. Jeffrey Fitzgerald's that way. So we certainly have the potential to do that. Now, we got to turn talk into reality. It just doesn't happen, and there's a lot of guys on the schedule going to try to keep us from doing that. But that opportunity's there in front of us.